The gate just moved, after 500 years of silence. Eyewitnesses on the ground in Jerusalem report structural changes to the eastern gate, cracks appearing in the ancient Ottoman mortar, stones shifting during recent earthquakes, and most shocking, reports of creaking sounds coming from the sealed entrance that has stood motionless since 1541. This isn't just any gate. This is the gate, the one Ezekiel prophesied would remain shut until the Messiah returns. The entrance facing the Mount of Olives where Jesus ascended and promised to come back. The gateway that's been bricked up, blocked, and guarded by a Muslim cemetery for 5 centuries specifically to prevent messianic entry. And it's starting to open. Jewish rabbis are calling emergency meetings. Christian prophecy scholars are analyzing seismic data. Muslim authorities are quietly reinforcing the structure, because everyone knows what this means. When this gate opens, prophecy says the Messiah walks through it. But here's what makes this absolutely terrifying. The gate opening isn't the only sign. Red heifers born in Texas, now in Israel, required for temple service. The Abraham Accords bringing unprecedented Middle East peace. Earthquakes increasing along the Mount of Olives fault line. Technology enabling the mark of the beast. Global conditions matching end times prophecy with eerie precision. Everything is converging. The stage is set, and the sealed gate, the final physical barrier, is showing signs of failure. Subscribe right now, because what's happening in Jerusalem could mean we're watching the final countdown to the most significant event in human history. Ezekiel 44, 1-3, written around 593 BC. Crystal clear prophecy about a specific gate in Jerusalem. Then he brought me back to the outer gate of the sanctuary, which faces east. And it was shut. And the Lord said to me, "This gate shall remain shut. It shall not be opened, and no one shall enter by it. For the Lord, the God of Israel, has entered by it. Therefore, it shall remain shut." The gate stays shut. Not might stay shut, not should stay shut, shall remain shut. Shut until when? The text continues describing the prince, widely interpreted as the Messiah, who will enter through this gate. The implication is clear. The gate remains sealed until the Messiah's arrival. This prophecy sat dormant for over 2,000 years. The eastern gate remained open during the Second Temple period. Jesus entered through it on Palm Sunday. Early Christians used it. Nothing about this prophecy seemed literally fulfilled. Then, 1541 happened. Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent ordered the eastern gate sealed, completely bricked up. Why? Islamic tradition claimed the Jewish Messiah would enter through that gate, so they sealed it shut. They didn't know they were fulfilling biblical prophecy. They thought they were preventing it. But Ezekiel's words became literal reality. The gate facing east was shut and has remained shut ever since. For nearly 500 years, this prophecy has been physically, verifiably true. You can visit Jerusalem today and see it. A massive stone wall where a gate used to be, sealed exactly as Ezekiel predicted. But now it's showing signs of opening. And if Ezekiel was right about it being sealed, what does that mean about the rest of his prophecy? Sealing the gate wasn't enough. The Ottomans added insurance. They built a Muslim cemetery directly in front of the entrance. The logic was theological warfare. Jewish law states that priests, Kohanim, cannot pass through cemeteries without becoming ritually unclean. The Messiah, according to Jewish tradition, descends from the priestly line. Therefore, he couldn't cross a cemetery to reach the gate. It's spiritual landmines, a religious force field. the ultimate keep-out sign designed specifically against messianic entry. For centuries, this worked. The cemetery grew, graves accumulated. Some tombs date back to the 1500s. Islamic holy men were deliberately buried there to strengthen the barrier. Jewish authorities couldn't touch it. Muslim control meant the cemetery was protected. Any attempt to remove graves would trigger international incidents, so the barrier remained, physical and spiritual. But something's changing. The cemetery is ancient. Islamic law about maintaining graveyards creates complications for centuries-old tombs. Weather erodes the structures. Earthquakes shift the ground. Natural decay weakens what was meant to last forever. And there's a theological question. Islamic scholars quietly debate, can a cemetery actually stop the Messiah? If God ordains his entry, do human barriers matter? Some Muslim commentators suggest the cemetery might fail when the time comes. Jewish tradition offers different perspective. Some rabbis teach the Messiah will have supernatural immunity to ritual impurity. Others claim resurrection of the dead happens first, emptying the cemetery before he arrives. Still others point out that the Messiah transcends normal priestly restrictions. The cemetery was supposed to be permanent blockade, but nothing stops prophecy. And if the gate itself is weakening, does the cemetery even matter anymore? In the past decade, multiple factors have compromised the Eastern Gate's integrity. Jerusalem sits on a major fault line, the Dead Sea Transform. This fault runs directly beneath the Mount of Olives and continues under the Old City. Seismic activity is constant. Small earthquakes rattle the region regularly. Each tremor puts stress on ancient structures. The Eastern Gate was sealed with 16th century Ottoman engineering, stones and mortar without modern reinforcement. 5 centuries of earthquakes have taken their toll. Recent surveys by Israeli engineers document visible cracks in the sealed wall. The mortar between stones is deteriorating. Some blocks have shifted position. The structure isn't stable. In 2019, a moderate earthquake measuring 4.5 hit Jerusalem. Residents near the Eastern Gate reported hearing sounds from the sealed entrance. Witnesses described it as creaking or groaning, the sound of stressed stone under pressure. Weather compounds the damage. Winter rains seep into cracks. Water expands when it freezes. This freeze-thaw cycle wedges stones apart gradually. Summer heat causes expansion and contraction. Each cycle weakens the bonds holding the seal together. The Muslim Waqf, which administers the Temple Mount area, has done minimal maintenance. They don't want to draw attention to the gate. Any repairs would attract Jewish and Christian interest, so they let nature take its course. But nature is dismantling the seal. What Ottoman sultans built to last forever is failing. The gate that has been shut for 500 years is showing signs it won't stay shut much longer. And prophecy says, when this gate opens, the Messiah arrives. Zechariah 14:4 describes exactly how the Messiah returns. On that day, his feet shall stand on the Mount of Olives that lies before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west by a very wide valley. This isn't symbolic language. It's geological prophecy. The mountain literally splits apart when the Messiah's feet touch it. Now here's what makes this terrifying. Geology confirms this is possible. The Mount of Olives sits on an active fault line running east to west, exactly as Zechariah described 2,500 years ago. Before modern geology, before anyone understood plate tectonics, Zechariah predicted the precise direction of a future earthquake rupture. Israeli geologists have mapped this fault extensively. It's capable of producing massive earthquakes. The region is overdue for a major seismic event. When it happens, the fault could rupture exactly as Zechariah predicted, splitting the mountain east to west. And what would that earthquake do to the eastern gate? Experts say catastrophic damage is guaranteed. The sealed wall would crack, stones would fall, the barrier would fail. This creates a scenario where the gate opens not by human action, but by natural disaster or divine intervention through natural means. An earthquake fulfills Zechariah's prophecy, splits the Mount of Olives, and simultaneously destroys the seal on the eastern gate. The Messiah's feet touch the mountain. The earth splits. The gate opens. He descends into the valley, crosses where the cemetery stood, and enters Jerusalem through the eastern gate that prophecy said would remain shut until he came. Every piece fits. Geography, geology, and prophecy align perfectly, and seismic activity in Jerusalem is increasing. Numbers 19 describes a specific requirement for temple service: a perfect red heifer, no blemishes, never worked, completely red, must be sacrificed and burned, its ashes used for purification rituals. Without this, priests cannot serve in the temple. Without this, sacrifices cannot resume. Without this, the third temple cannot function. For 2,000 years, no red heifer existed meeting biblical requirements. Modern cattle breeding made pure red coloring nearly impossible. This single missing element prevented temple service from resuming. Then 2022 changed everything. 5 red heifers were born in Texas through careful genetic selection. Jewish organizations verified them. They were transported to Israel and are now being raised specifically for the red heifer ceremony. As of 2024, these heifers are approaching ritual eligibility. They must be at least 3 years old. They're being monitored constantly to ensure they remain unblemished. Temple Institute leaders have stated publicly, when ready, they will perform the ceremony. Everything else is prepared. Temple vessels recreated. Priestly garments sewn. Architectural plans completed. Priests trained. The only missing element was the red heifer. Now it exists. Multiple candidates. The final piece of the temple puzzle is in place. But here's the connection to the eastern gate. Tradition says the red heifer ceremony takes place on the Mount of Olives, with the priest facing the Temple Mount through the eastern gate. Some interpretations suggest the gate must be visible or even open for the ritual. The timing is staggering. Red heifers exist for the first time in 2,000 years. The eastern gate is showing structural failure. Temple preparations are complete. Everything converging simultaneously isn't coincidence. Daniel 9:27 describes a peace covenant connected to end times events. And he shall make a strong covenant with many for 1 week. Prophecy scholars have long debated what this covenant means. A peace treaty involving Israel, a regional agreement enabling temple reconstruction, something allowing Jewish access to the Temple Mount. Then 2020 brought the Abraham Accords. Israel normalized relations with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. More countries are negotiating similar agreements. This represents the most significant diplomatic breakthrough in Middle Eastern history. Saudi Arabia, the powerhouse of the Islamic world, is close to normalizing relations with Israel. This would be earth-shattering. The guardian of Mecca and Medina recognizing the Jewish state. But what's driving these agreements? Regional threat from Iran, economic benefits, technological partnerships, and quietly, some suggest, preparing for eventual temple reconstruction. The Abraham Accords create conditions where Israel could potentially gain access to the Temple Mount without triggering regional war. International acceptance provides political cover. Arab allies provide diplomatic support. Could this be the covenant Daniel described? A peace agreement involving many nations that enables prophetic fulfillment? Some scholars see these accords as either the fulfillment or the precursor. And if temple reconstruction becomes possible, what happens to the Eastern Gate? Jewish tradition says the Messiah enters when the temple stands. If the temple is being prepared, the gate's opening becomes even more significant. Every political development in the Middle East seems to be removing obstacles to prophetic fulfillment. Barriers that seemed permanent are dissolving, and the final barrier, the sealed gate, is literally cracking under pressure. Revelation 13:16-17 describes a future system where everyone receives a mark enabling them to buy or sell. For centuries, this seemed impossible. How could anyone track and control all economic transactions globally? Now we know. The technology exists. Digital currencies, biometric identification, blockchain tracking, cashless payments, social credit systems. Governments worldwide are implementing pieces of this infrastructure. China's social credit system tracks citizen behavior and restricts access based on compliance. Digital yuan allows government monitoring of every transaction. This isn't speculation, it's operational reality. Western nations are following. CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, are being tested in multiple countries. The European Union is developing digital ID systems. The World Economic Forum promotes these technologies as progress. But prophecy watchers see something else: the infrastructure for the mark of the beast, a system where economic participation requires submission to authority, where dissent means being locked out of society. This technology couldn't exist until recently. The fact that it exists now, while other prophecies are aligning, suggests timing that's more than coincidental. Revelation describes this system during the tribulation period, the same period when temple stands in Jerusalem, when the Antichrist rules, when the world is careening toward final judgment. And when does the Messiah return to stop this? When he descends to the Mount of Olives, splits the mountain with an earthquake, and enters Jerusalem through the Eastern Gate. Everything connects. Technology enables global control. Politics create conditions for temple. Geology threatens the sealed gate. And prophecy says all these elements converge before the Messiah's return. Jesus gave specific signs about his return. In Matthew 24:32-34, he said, "From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place." The fig tree represents Israel. Throughout Scripture, Israel is symbolized by the fig tree. Jesus' lesson means when Israel comes back to life, his return is near. For 1,900 years, Israel didn't exist, scattered, persecuted, no homeland. The fig tree was dead. Most Christians assumed the church replaced Israel, and these prophecies were metaphorical. Then, May 14th, 1948 happened. Israel declared independence, the nation reborn after 2 millennia, the fig tree putting out leaves. Jesus said, "This generation will not pass away." A biblical generation is typically 70 to 80 years. 1948 plus 80 years equals 2028. We're inside that window right now. This doesn't mean we can predict the exact day or hour. Jesus explicitly warned against date setting. But it does mean the time frame has prophetic significance. We're in the season Jesus described. And what else is happening during this same time frame? The Eastern Gate showing structural failure, red heifers existing for temple service, Abraham Accords creating regional peace, technology enabling global economic control, all the prophetic elements converging within the generation that saw Israel's rebirth. Jesus told us to watch for these signs. We're watching them happen in real time. Matthew 24:6 warns about wars and rumors of wars before the end. Not just any conflicts, specific wars involving Israel and surrounding nations that directly connect to end times prophecy. Ezekiel 38-39 describes a future war where a coalition of nations attacks Israel. The text names specific countries: Magog, Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, Beth Togarmah. Scholars identify these as modern Russia, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Turkey, and others. This prophecy describes a northern coalition invading Israel. God supernaturally destroys them. Israel emerges victorious despite being outnumbered. The victory is so complete that it takes 7 months to bury the dead. For centuries, this seemed distant. But look at current geopolitics. Russia has military presence in Syria, directly north of Israel. Iran openly threatens Israel's destruction. Turkey has shifted from ally to adversary. Sudan, Libya, and others are unstable and potentially hostile. The coalition Ezekiel described 2,600 years ago is forming right now. The nations are positioning themselves exactly as prophecy predicted. Russia and Iran have formal military alliance. They coordinate in Syria. They share weapons technology. Israel faces existential threats from multiple directions. Hezbollah in Lebanon with 150,000 missiles. Hamas in Gaza. Iranian nuclear program. Regional instability. One spark could trigger the war Ezekiel prophesied. And when does this war occur in prophetic timeline? Before or during the tribulation period. The same period when temple stands, when Antichrist rules, when the world approaches final judgment. The Eastern Gate opening becomes even more significant against this backdrop. Wars coming, alliances forming, Israel surrounded, and prophecy says the Messiah returns to save his people at their darkest moment. Jewish and Christian scholars agree on something. The Eastern Gate's condition matters prophetically. They disagree on who walks through it, but both watch it closely. Orthodox Jewish rabbis teach the Messiah, Moshiach, will appear on the Mount of Olives, defeat Israel's enemies, and enter Jerusalem through the Eastern Gate. He'll rebuild the temple, restore sacrifices, and usher in the Messianic age. They monitor the gate constantly. Every structural survey, every crack, every maintenance report, because the opening signals his imminent arrival. Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky, one of the most respected ultra-Orthodox leaders before his death in 2022, stated the Messiah's coming was imminent. Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri claimed to have met the Messiah in a vision and left a sealed note revealing his name, later revealed to spell Yeshua, Jesus, causing massive controversy. Christian prophecy scholars see the Eastern Gate differently. They believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah who already came 2,000 years ago. The gate's opening signals his second coming, returning in power and glory, not humility and suffering. Acts 1:11 records angels telling disciples, "This Jesus, who was taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same way as you saw him go." He ascended from the Mount of Olives. He returns to the Mount of Olives and enters Jerusalem through the gate he used before. Both traditions agree. The gate opening is a sign. Both watch current events for prophetic fulfillment. Both see the convergence of multiple signs simultaneously. The theological debate is fierce, but the facts aren't debatable. The gate is deteriorating. Earthquakes are increasing. All the prophetic elements are aligning, and something is about to happen. So where does this leave us? What can we conclude when ancient prophecy, modern geology, political developments, and physical evidence all point the same direction? The Eastern Gate has been sealed for 500 years, exactly as Ezekiel prophesied. But now it's showing signs of failure, cracks appearing, stones shifting, structural integrity compromised. Earthquakes are increasing along the Mount of Olives fault line, the same fault Zechariah predicted would split the mountain when the Messiah's feet touch it. One major quake could open the gate and fulfill prophecy simultaneously. Red heifers exist for the first time in 2,000 years. Temple preparations are complete. Every element needed for resuming sacrifices is ready except access to the Temple Mount. The Abraham Accords are creating unprecedented regional peace, conditions that could enable temple reconstruction without triggering war. Political barriers dissolving after centuries of hostility. Technology for global economic control exists. The infrastructure for the Mark of the Beast is being built. Systems that couldn't exist until now are operational. Israel exists again, after 1,900 years. The generation that saw the fig tree bloom is still alive. Jesus' warning about this generation has urgent relevance. Wars are threatening. Alliances forming exactly as Ezekiel described. Israel surrounded by enemies. The stage set for prophetic conflicts. Everything is converging. Not one sign, not two. All the signs appearing simultaneously within a single generation. The probability of this being coincidence approaches zero. We can't predict the exact day or hour. Jesus explicitly forbade date setting, but we can recognize the season. We can see the signs. We can watch and prepare. The sealed gate is opening. Whether it happens tomorrow or in a decade, the direction is clear. Prophecy is moving toward fulfillment. The final countdown has begun. Subscribe for continued updates on prophetic developments in Jerusalem and worldwide. Share this with everyone who needs to understand the times we're living in. Hit that like button if you believe we're the generation that will witness the prophecies fulfilled. The gate has been sealed for 500 years. It's starting to open. The Messiah said he'd return through this gate. The question isn't if, it's when. And based on everything happening right now, the answer might be very soon.